If feminism just means equality, then why not just call it equality? Equality is too broad a term. It can be associated with almost every social justice movement in existence. Why not just call it equality, to be more inclusive? Same reason we're not renaming salmon to fish. So if feminism is meant to be a progressive movement, why not just call it equality, to be more inclusive? If this is your criteria, why would you call any progressive movement anything other than equality? Why single out feminism? Feminism is more than one thing. For example, it's a critical theory used as a lens for examining media, art, and society. It would make no sense to call that equality. Feminism is also positioned against patriarchy, which is about equality. It's feminists who spend the most time talking about and wanting to address things like toxic masculinity. It's not something feminists came up with, but it's certainly in the modern feminist rubric, and is all about equality. Moreover, the idea that all sexism has already been solved, making feminism somehow superfluous, is absurd, and there's nothing stopping others forming an equality movement to do all the stuff you think feminists can't or won't, because it's focusing on a specific type of inequality that exists between Cs. Wanting equality is great, but if you don't know what's unequal, how will you change anything? Because it removes the focus from women's issues and allows everyone else's issues to eclipse them. Women have been socialized practically from birth to put the issues of others before themselves, to be nurturing, pleasing, helpful, and quiet, and to put everyone else's needs above their own. They are punished for being demanding, assertive, or loud, or asking for more than they are given. So making this about women, their rights, their needs, their health and welfare, issues that no other group than women share, that's important to fighting one of the most fundamental, toxic forms of misogyny. Equality doesn't cut it, especially in things like medical care. You can't just carbon copy men's healthcare for women and have it work, because women's bodies are different. Many women's issues just don't have an equivalent with men's issues, like breastfeeding in public, or access to period products in schools. Feminism is more than just giving women the exact same thing as men. It's about allowing women to get their needs met. And yes, there are men's issues out there, and they need to be addressed, but they shouldn't derail or distract from women's issues. Women shouldn't be forced to stop talking about feminism simply because men need to sort out their toxic masculinity issues. Because it pertains to equality from the perspective of a woman. That's like asking, why is it called breast cancer awareness and not just cancer awareness? Because it's fairly important for a phrase that calls for equality to also make it clear which demographic is not being treated fairly. That's why Black Lives Matter is what it is. Because someone who hears all lives matter could get the wrong impression that white people are the oppressed ones. The same logic applies here. Women are the ones who need better treatment. So the call for gender equality should acknowledge that all lives matter isn't more inclusive than Black Lives Matter, even though the literal words suggest it is. The goal is equality, but it's more about leveling the playing field for the underdog to achieve equality. Because of the historical context where men have always been favored, equality could be misleading, because feminism isn't just about making men and women equal. Gender equality could imply cutting men's rights so they're equal to women's. Feminism is specifically about securing women the same rights and freedoms that men have. Feminism is also specifically about women's rights. Yeah, we care about men. We care about their rights. We want equality with them. But feminism is about female liberation. Men didn't need to be liberated because they already had the rights and freedoms women were fighting for. It's like calling yourself a boulder lifter because you rescue people trapped under boulders. And the people with a handful of pebbles in their pocket ask why you can't call yourself the equal rocks group because they want equal liberation from rocks. Obviously, equality is what a lot of people want. But that's really vague and doesn't address the issues resulting in inequality. Those groups need to learn to understand the term rather than changing the term to be understood by those who don't want to learn. Feminism is a word that specifies one type of equality movement to counter targeted discrimination specifically against women. Women are targeted by misogynists in certain unique, complex ways and patterns. So there's nothing wrong with them wanting to have a more specific word to describe the type of discrimination they are fighting against. Note: if a large group of women decide they no longer want to use the term feminism, maybe because misogynists have tried to corrupt and distort the meaning of the word, or because some aspects of the general movement doesn't quite speak to them, then I'll respect that new word they decide upon and use it. They are the ones being targeted and fighting back, so they get to decide upon the word terminology, not men. Just like, for example, the American black community decided they no longer wanted to use the word Negro to represent their cause, fight against racism. So I respect that change in wording. But yeah, for now, there's still a large enough group of women that want to use the word feminism in a positive sense to represent the unique and complex issues women have faced for countless centuries now. And now a lot of men want to destroy that word and abolish it. So they try to taint and tarnish the word. Egalitarianism is the word. Man, some of you show how little you bother to actually read up on things. Ironically referring to echo chambers while talking out of your own ignorant asshole instead of informing yourself. Feminism comes from historical movements for women's rights spanning centuries. It doesn't just mean equality. If you genuinely believe it just means anything and isn't a complex and huge concept, spend some more time educating yourself in general. To be honest, instead of trying to understand everything by reading a paragraph or less. Because it's not just about equality between everyone, but about the systemic oppression of women. You mean egalitarianism? The reason it's called feminism is because it's looking for equality for women who don't have it. Rather than just a call for equality, it's about advancing women's rights specifically. In the pursuit of equality, the problem comes in places where that goal is mostly achieved, and rather than turn their energy to those in genuine need, people continue on their crusade demanding superiority or recompense and calling it equality. Because fair and equal are different things. Equality sounds nice, but in a society where everyone has different needs, equality is only beneficial to a few. Equality is too general of a term. Feminism is called that way because, in order to achieve desired equality, they are focusing on one specific marginalized group and deal with issues that specifically affect them. Which is important because, otherwise, gender-related issues just end up part of the overall equality problem and don't get enough attention or work. 1. Feminists typically don't kowtow to the sensitivities of sexists. That's kinda the point. Equality movements aren't, ask the people oppressing you how you can cater to their sensibilities enough for them to see you as equal. 2. Feminism is, ultimately, for and about women. Yes, men can be feminists, just like white people can be anti-racist, but at the end of the day it's about advancing women's rights. A movement about equality for a specific group should not have to neuter their intentions because someone from the outside might want to help. If you are a male feminist, you should understand that the fight isn't all about you. Demanding that it be called something to include male allies just shows you don't really get it. Educated feminists also discuss things that affect other groups that are intersectional, like racism and queerphobia? Yes. But in these discussions, they frame it in a feminist mindset. Like, how does misogyny contribute to queerphobia? What about the intersection of racism and sexism that black women deal with? One criticism I do think is worth mentioning is that, historically, feminist leaders have not been focused on intersectionality as mentioned above. It is important to recognize that things like racism, homophobia, etc., will always prevent true women's equality as long as women are treated differently because of those things. If you want a specific group about homophobia or racism or men's rights, there are groups for that. Just because feminists have a focus doesn't mean they disregard other groups. Or, they shouldn't. Your everyday feminist simply believes women should be equal to men. But they're not feminist leaders. They're laymen. Therefore, they don't get super deep into intersectional feminism and the big picture behind it all. Because then you couldn't tell it apart from movements for racial equality, economic equality, health-based equality, age-based equality, etc., etc. Lots of groups are fighting for equality. But like every arena of modern life, different people and groups specialize in different areas to be efficient. Feminism is the group fighting for equality that specializes in ways women are disadvantaged compared to men.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Ericast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.